Tuesday.
Hey, before we get started today, you might have heard that Start Here has been nominated for 2 Signal Awards. Yes, I will hold for applause. We were nominated for Best News and Politics Podcast and Best Writing for our episode Mother Tongue about the war in Ukraine. And something I love about the Signal Awards is they actually give you, our listener, the opportunity to vote for the shows you feel are most deserving. So this morning, I wanted to ask for your help. If you find Start Here useful to you, I hope you will consider taking a moment right now to vote for us using the links in our episode description. Like if you go to the description on this show you're listening to right now, you can just click this link, boom, you're there. We've also posted those links on our social handles at Start Here ABC, and it only takes a minute or two. You go to the description, follow that link, cast your vote. Voting ends today. So if you can, this is the moment. We really appreciate it. All right, here's the show. It's Thursday, December 22nd, and talk about a battle-hardened leader. You start here.
Our 2 nations are allies in this battle.
In his first trip outside Ukraine since the war began, Volodymyr Zelenskyy asks for help but commands respect.
He wanted to connect the fight for freedom in Ukraine with the American story.
Will a powerful speech get him the firepower he's looking for? Running for Congress is like a job interview, but usually your employer checks your resume.
Details around his education, around his business background, around a supposed animal rescue charity.
The bizarre story that is roiling the new GOP majority. And who's Jewish enough to be Israeli?
Ultra-Orthodox Jews and observant Jews say only if you have a Jewish mother are you Jewish.
As Benjamin Netanyahu once again takes power, Israeli officials have a new take on who's welcome. From ABC News, this is Start Here. I'm Brad Milkey. Since February, when Russia invaded his country, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has been a man with a target on his back. I don't mean like a political target on his back. I mean it was clear early on that Russia intended to take him out of office by any means necessary. Because of that, of course, his real-time whereabouts were closely guarded for months until Russia finally gave up on capturing the capital of Kiev. Throughout the year, Zelenskyy has visited civilians in their neighborhoods. He's visited troops on the front. He's addressed foreign nations remotely, asking for more support. The situation was never secure enough for him to leave his own borders and visit allies like most presidents can. Well, yesterday, suddenly and dramatically, Volodymyr Zelenskyy appeared in Washington, D.C.
You are the man of the year.
It started with a meeting with President Biden at the White House, followed by a press conference.
This visit to the United States became really a historic one for our relations with the United States and the American leadership.
And finally, the highest honor afforded a foreign national, an address to a joint session of Congress in person.
The President of Ukraine.
Let's start today at the White House. ABC senior national correspondent Terry Moran was on hand for all this. Terry, first of all, why this visit? Why Washington? Why would he travel 5,000 miles for this?
Brad, what an amazing day it was in Washington, this whirlwind visit, concluding with that speech last night. And the reason for the visit, for this historic moment, is because Vladimir Zelenskyy wants to do 2 things. To say thank you to the President of the United States and to the American people who've been incredibly generous in supporting his country's fight for freedom, for nationhood, and to ask for more.
Our 2 nations are allies in this battle. And next year will be a turning point. I know it, the point when Ukrainian courage and American resolve must guarantee the future of our common freedom.
So it's at a moment when he knows that the Republican Party, a big part of which has been skeptical of aid to Ukraine, is about to take over the House of Representatives. So it was a hard task that he had. But I think he also more deeply, with this dangerous journey, fresh from the battlefields in eastern Ukraine to the White House, which is decked out in all its Christmas finery, he wanted to connect the fight for freedom in Ukraine with the American story. And that's what he did again and again in his appearances here yesterday and last night.
Yeah, Walk me through this address last night, because it was extraordinary. It was the first address of a joint session of Congress that I've seen where the man of honor shows up in a sweatshirt and combat boots.
That is Zelenskyy. Look, he had no preparation for public life at all, or public office. He was an actor, however, in a sitcom playing the president, and when the cataclysm came to him, when Russia attacked, he reached into that one experience in his life, which was how to perform. He had to make a decision. Would he stay or would he go? If you remember, the Americans invited him to get out of the country, and he said, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition.
Right.
And from that moment, he decided what role he would play, who he would be. And that's who you saw.
Ukraine holds its lines and will never surrender.
And the roars of applause, the cascades of cheers that came again and again from both sides of the aisle was an extraordinary tribute to his character, to the character of the Ukrainian people.
We'll celebrate Christmas.
And he has this knack, as he showed so well last night, in making things deeply personal and relevant when he talked about Christmas time.
The light of our faith in ourselves will not be put out.
We're just a couple of days away from Christmas, and he said in Ukraine and many places it will be candlelight Christmas. Not because it's romantic, he said, but because they're in the dark and cold and in fear under the Russian onslaught.
If they attack us with Iranian drones and our people will have to go to bomb shelters on Christmas Eve, Ukrainians will still sit down at the holiday table and cheer up each other.
And he took the Congress there. He took the American people to that fear and that home, like he did in the White House yesterday afternoon, when he said, what I wish for the American people this Christmas is peace.
And I wish you to see your children alive and adult. And I wish you to see your children when they will go to universities and to see their children.
He's had to make the tough decisions on strategy, on which attacks should go forward, on which territory may have to be ceded. And so he's demonstrated remarkable leadership right through. And I think that's one of the things that the Congress responded to.
America's leadership remains solid, bicameral, and bipartisan. Thank you.
Those cheers came from both sides of the aisle. The enthusiasm from both sides of the aisle. And part of that is a tribute to Zelenskyy and his character and the Ukrainian people and their character, but also the Republicans, a large portion of whom in their base don't believe any more aid should go to Ukraine.
I was going to say, Terry, a lot of Republicans had expressed concerns about sending Ukraine more money. You didn't see him pushing that agenda last night. Is there a chance Zelenskyy could get everything he wants, all the arms shipments he wants, by sheer force of personality?
I don't think so. I think that there's a reckoning coming in aid to Ukraine to some degree, but they can read the polls. The Republicans have to respect that.
Your money is not charity. It's an investment in the global security and democracy that we handle in the most responsible way.
The problem for Zelenskyy is that Republicans really will change the policy as much as they can, and without being accused of abandoning Ukraine. And you could hear in the press conference yesterday that he had with President Biden that there will be conflict about the end of this war.
A free, independent, prosperous, and secure Ukraine is the vision.
But that left out the territory that Ukraine would keep. And Zelenskyy is saying, we want it all back. He said territorial integrity. He said absolute victory last night. At some point, there will be friction between Biden and Zelenskyy as well. But right now, they are united that there has to be more victories on the battlefield, that Russia really has to be defeated.
And if anything, this show, I mean, he's had a lot of victories here. Perhaps the biggest victory here is just the fact that his country is stable enough where he was able to come visit on a Wednesday in December. A big moment in Washington. Like you said, Terry, just a scene we don't get with a lot of American presidents, how bipartisan this adoration was. Terry Moran at the White House. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Brad.
Next up on Start Here, for every feel-good story in Washington, there's at least one story like this. Stick with us. We're back in a bit.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Bring them on.
If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place that's spectacular as well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends.
Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom. Now that's how you start your day, people.
After an extraordinary news-making year, thank you for making ABC's This Week America's #1 news and politics show on Sunday mornings.
As of today, in a big way, we have inaugurated abcnews.com.
A lot has changed in our world since Peter made that announcement. But what hasn't changed is the commitment to groundbreaking reporting and innovation at abcnews.com. And here's to everything ahead.
So all the pictures last night were of this unified Congress, everyone supporting Ukraine. It's like a Capitol Hill holiday card. But there's a potentially divisive story unfolding in the Republican caucus this week. Remember, they're supposed to have a 9-vote advantage over Democrats in the next House of Representatives, but that's only if all their members show up to vote. And ever since new revelations emerged about a new freshman congressman from New York, his new constituents haven't laid eyes on him. ABC's political director Rick Klein joins us now. And Rick, you're a New Yorker, born and bred. Can you please catch me up on this drama about this incoming congressman?
Yeah, George Santos, elected in what a mild upset from Long Island as part of a sweep of a bunch of downstate districts that Republicans won away from Democrats.
Hi guys.
How are you?
Sorry to interrupt. I'm George Santos, running for U.S. Congress. Just trying to get stuff done the right way in D.C.
He actually ran 2 years ago, lost, runs again, this time with the Democrat retiring, and wins by about 8 points.
I'm a businessman, just spent the last 14 years in finance.
Who are you running against again?
I'm running against Robert Zimmerman. He's a Democrat in the race.
Now comes this New York Times expose that finds that almost every aspect of his resume was either embellished or purely made up, or at least can't be substantiated. Details around his education, around his business background, around a supposed animal rescue charity, even allegations around business shenanigans back in Brazil, where his family is from.
Santos contributed $700,000 of his own money into his campaign, but the Times reports the source of the income is unclear.
There are serious holes in just about every part of the story that he has told, and now there are calls for ethics investigations, maybe for federal inquiries. Meanwhile, Santos himself has basically gone underground. He has disappeared, has not come once before cameras or before reporters to answer questions, just puts out kind of a vague statement from his lawyer saying this is all an attempt to bring him down.
Wait, what exactly is not adding? Is it like he didn't have the job at the bank he claimed to work at, or like he wasn't at the bank at all? If he's lying, how big could the lies possibly be?
I mean, look, people are talking about this as Catch Me If You Can or Talented Mr. Ripley.
Right now, George Santos appears to be in the witness protection program. No one can find him. He's hiding from legitimate questions that his constituents are asking.
Almost everything doesn't check out. Every once in a while, there's stories about politicians, actually pretty regularly, that say, look, so-and-so didn't actually get this medal or didn't serve in this administration or didn't have this particular job. We can't find any evidence that he went to college in the places that his resume says he did, that he worked in the financial institutions that say that he says he worked at.
And no records could be found to back his claims of being a Baruch graduate who worked for Citigroup and Goldman Sachs.
Even the charity that he supposedly founded has no record of being even established according to the IRS. This isn't just kind of sanding away the rough edges of a resume. This appears to be made out of whole cloth.
Wait, Rick, how do we learn about this after? This is after the election, right? So, like, does he get seated? Like, this would make a big difference in whether people voted for him. Does he still serve?
It's wild. Now, look, this gets caught up very quickly, as you referenced, in internal party politics. Kevin McCarthy needs to win the vote for Speaker before anything else can happen in this new Congress. Maybe not coincidentally, one of the few things that Santos has done in the last couple days, right before this story was about to break, after he got the inquiries from the New York Times, he tweeted his support for Kevin McCarthy. So now McCarthy has himself gone silent on the question. Look, the Constitution, federal laws allow Congress to decide whether someone should serve as a member of Congress or not. There's a couple of options here. They could decide to not seat a member. They could decide to expel a member after he's been put into office. They could also launch an ethics inquiry, although the fact that so many of these things happened before he was a member of Congress, before voters had a chance to vote on him, might complicate that. Now, though,
but voters don't get to re-vote, but Congress could do its own thing.
No, it's too late. I mean, look, this is a massive failure, I think, of journalistic outlets not to dig into it, and also of opposition research outlets. I mean, how he could run for Congress twice and these basic things. There have been hints around this, but no one directly hit all of this information in one place until the Times started asking questions and published its report some 6 weeks after Election Day. So voters in that district, unless the Republican Congress decides to do something else, they're going to be stuck with him.
And he's going to have to answer that question. Did you perpetrate a fraud on the voters of the 3rd Congressional District in New York?
Democrats are saying they're going to try to run a challenger against him in 2 years. You can imagine that being a pretty sought-after assignment, given all these holes in the resume. We still haven't heard from Santos himself, and there is the possibility that there's an effort to get him not seated in the next Congress. Now, I think the chances of that happening are somewhere between slim and none, given the fact that Republicans take over and they need all of those votes, and they're going to make the case that, look, people elected him, and there's no prerequisite for having to tell the truth on everything. Plus, he hasn't even told his side of the story. So I don't see him being unseated based on what's out there now, but his conduct from here does matter. And it's going to be a big old headache for Kevin McCarthy and the House Republicans to get through if he's able to take the speakership and if Santos starts showing up for work. Because, again, we haven't even seen the guy in public since the story broke.
Right, and like you said, this doesn't change the balance of power from Republicans to Democrats, but every single vote does make a difference in a Republican House that will be this tight. All right, Rick Klein, wild story. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Brad.
Tonight is the 5th night of Hanukkah, which obviously lots of people know about here in the States. Everyone knows in Israel. And last night, after families across Israel lit the 4th candle of the week, Benjamin Netanyahu made an announcement. He and his government are back in charge. That's right. If you weren't paying attention, Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving leader who was pushed out of office in disgrace, has soared back into power after his party won recent elections. That party made the necessary partnerships to take power. But those partnerships also mean Israel is about to be governed by perhaps the most far-right government in its history. And these new officials have new ideas about what makes someone Jewish enough to join them. ABC's Jordana Miller is based in Jerusalem. Jordana, first of all, Bibi is back, right? Like, how did he return, and what's it been like in Israel since these votes?
That's right. It's actually incredible. Benjamin Netanyahu making a comeback. Remember, he's in the middle of a corruption trial, right? Facing charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust, but it didn't matter. The voters never really abandoned him, and he found new partners. But as you say, some of them have new ideas. Many of them are on the far right and ultra-Orthodox leaders. And really because of them, he was swept back into office with a comfortable 64-seat majority and a government that will probably last 4 years, which we haven't seen in Israel in a long time.
And can we talk about this what this new government is going to accomplish? I mean, there's lots of things on the agenda, but there's one that's kind of raised a lot of eyebrows, this rule in Israel that's very specific to kind of this young country. It's called the right of return, right? Which basically means if you're Jewish anywhere on earth, Israel would like to make it easier for this Jewish diaspora to become Israeli citizens. But it sounds like one of the early controversies is that this rule could potentially, change?
Right. The law of return is one that, really resonates around the world because this was a law set, by the state of Israel at its founding that basically said anybody who's Jewish can come to Israel and get automatic citizenship. And it was based in part on the Nuremberg laws. If Hitler could murder someone if only one of their grandparents was Jewish, well, then Israel was going to say, we're going to give you a home and you can find your way back to the Jewish people, culture, religion, whatever it is.
You have a city where you live, you have a house that you live in, but a home is something completely different. And that is what Israel is to me.
And it is a powerful, symbolic, and, very practical part of Israel's basic laws. And what is happening now is that some of the far-right leaders who are about to take power and their ultra-Orthodox partners really are trying to curtail that law. Ultra-Orthodox Jews and observant Jews say only if you have a Jewish mother are you Jewish, right? That is an extremely narrow view of what it means to be Jewish. I mean, most of the Jewish world is not Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox. It is a expansive definition of what it is to be a Jew. Many people are atheists, but they identify with Jewish culture. Some are Reform, conservative. So this attempt by these far-right leaders, and they have been open about it, they insisted at one point to have it actually in the coalition agreements with the prime minister. That has been dropped, and now it will be discussed in committee.
Wait, and Jordana, why is that so urgent to these members? Like, why is it so urgent to not accept certain people into the country? Is the idea just like, if you're not Jewish enough for us, we don't want you here? Is that the signal?
Right, it's a great question. I mean, I think it speaks to a kind of fundamentalist streak in parts of the Orthodox Jewish world that see, some kind of danger in people who are not, Jewish according to Jewish law. And there's plenty of Jews who come from Ukraine and Russia where they were, not permitted to be Jews or explore their Jewish identity. And it's not surprising that some of their families intermarried and, there's only one Jewish grandparent. But should that deny them the right to be part of the Jewish people? Israel says no, and most of the world says no. But this group of far-right leaders, they want to, in a sense, narrow the scope on who can be considered a Jew, and then, of course, who can come to Israel and have citizenship. And many people are speaking out about it. The prime minister himself, Benjamin Netanyahu, is opposed to this. But remember, this is a parliamentary system in Israel. Netanyahu doesn't have...
He needs them.
Yeah, he needs them. He's beholden to these parties in a way he never has before.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, what it means for both Israel and the rest of the world. Because being Jewish and being Israeli, like you've said, very different things. But surely what's happening in Israel can then kind of affect views towards Jews everywhere else, right? Towards, what it means to be Jewish across the world.
Absolutely. I mean, the largest Jewish community outside of Israel is the United States. Right. And there's already tension between the issues around Jewish identity. Right, so it will really alienate, I think, a lot of American Jews. And there's a lot of prominent, Jewish leaders who are already speaking out against this change. Including Rick Jacobs, who's in charge of the Reform movement.
They'd prefer that we disappear from Jewish life, but we're not going to go away. We're going to stand our ground for an Israel that is home for all of us, not just the ultra-Orthodox or the ultra-nationalists.
Abe Foxman, the former head of the ADL, said, if this happens, even I won't be considered a Jew to these people, right? So it will have a ripple effect, and I think that's why I think Benjamin Netanyahu wisely is against it, but he's going to have to fight it now in committee and probably hope it just somehow dies along the way.
All right, a fascinating moment here. Jordana Miller there in Jerusalem, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brad.
And one last thing. There are very few holiday events more innocent, more wholesome than the Radio City Christmas Spectacular.
We deck the hall with Christmas. The Rockettes are our dancing.
You got Santa, you got the Rockettes. Talk about family friendly. But recently, a mother who had shown up with her daughter's Girl Scout troop to see the Rockettes was told she had to wait outside. She wasn't allowed in with her family. She was guilty by association. Kelly Conlon says she was stopped by security who said she wasn't allowed in because of the law firm she worked for. See, Radio City Music Hall belongs to the owner of Madison Square Garden, this company called MSG. MSG has recently enacted a policy where if your law firm is working on a case against them, you're not allowed on their premises. And even though Conlon doesn't even practice in New York, she's from New Jersey, even though she's not working on this case, and even though that case is about a restaurant, not a theater, she was spotted there and kicked out. But what's most bizarre about this is how she was spotted. It wasn't an eagle-eyed security guard, it was the facility's facial recognition system. See, at MSG venues, there are signs in the lobby warning you that facial recognition is at work. Lots of cameras meant as a security measure, especially in places like Penn Station that have been concerned about terror attacks in the past. It's not just MSG either. As facial recognition has become more advanced, it's being used in more and more spaces. At Taylor Swift concerts, venues have employed the technology to quickly make sure stalkers weren't breaking court orders by slipping in. At airports, it compares faces to those on terror watch lists. In stores, this could now be used to charge customers without making them pull out their wallet. They grab a soda, they walk out, you just charge their credit card. You got their face on file. But critics say none of this is worth it. Like, what if you don't want to be tracked? You just can't go to concerts anymore? What if local law enforcement start trawling for undocumented immigrants? Especially since we know these systems are often less trained to differentiate minorities. Could someone be hassled by cops just because a camera got it wrong? In a statement, MSG said its policy was straightforward, it was provided to this law firm, and, quote, while we understand this policy is disappointing to some, we cannot ignore the fact that litigation creates an inherently adverse environment, end quote. But there was nothing adversarial about Kelly Conlon showing up. Same with another lawyer who was booted from a Brandi Carlile concert in October. Same reasoning. Critics say this new face phase isn't about security, it's corporate bullying. I just hope that daughter in the Girl Scout troop gave a good play-by-play back to her mom, who apparently waited outside on 6th Avenue the whole time. More on all these stories at abcnews.com or the ABC News app. I'm Brad Milkey. See you tomorrow.
Tonight, blizzard warnings and life-threatening cold wreaking havoc on holiday travel for millions. Flights delayed or canceled, bracing for what could be the coldest Christmas in decades. More Americans turn to the #1 program on television, World News Tonight with David Muir.
This is where I belong. This is home. Real dirt in the sunlight again. I'm very excited. Anything could happen at any moment.
My heart is so happy.